Good morning. The committee will come to order. Welcome to Privileges and Elections Subcommittee 1, first meeting of this session. And we've got a not so terribly full docket, but we've got a lot of people that need to be in other places as rapidly as possible. So we're going to move as quickly as we possibly can on this. I will tell you, I already know that there are some folks that are signed up online to speak to just about every bill that we've got. But we're going to keep this as crisp as we possibly can, but we do want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be heard. Do we need to take roll this morning? Okay, so if we will go ahead and show your attendance. And we have everyone here, so very good. All right. Now, our first block, we have these three bills that are all dealing with absentee voting and a couple of different variations on that. And because we've got, in having talked with all of the patrons, Delegate Runyon is actually not going to be here. We'll deal with his in just a moment, and we'll save Delegate Scott for just a moment. But Delegate Durant, if you will tell us about your fine bill here.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. HB 1901 deals with absentee voting in person and moving it to the 14th day prior to election. So what I have seen, Mr. Chairman, is that Virginia is a bit of an outlier amongst the 50 states with the average voting period is under 3 weeks. And so the issue that's been shared repeatedly with me is by both constituents and localities that we hear there has been an impact in several respects. There is a burden on localities when it comes to staffing and supporting in the polling locations. Each locality is responsible for that budget for additional SAD offices if that's necessary, additional staffing for officer of the elections, and sometimes they are dealing with inadequate staffing. The second area that it impacts us is that it can potentially interfere with the decision-making process. Candidate debates may occur and have occurred after early voting has begun, and we've seen, in fact, some candidates have withdrawn from the ballot, so this may impact other candidates who remain on the ballot. There is real debate on whether this actually has a negative impact on voter turnout. We've seen state data that suggests that it does, in fact, suppress it. And finally, we have an increased cost. Candidates must focus on their turnout efforts instead of engaging in voter engagement efforts. And so in an area when expenditures are skyrocketing, these furthering costs are not in the best interest of the electorate. So I hope it is the will of this committee to pass this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Very quickly, any questions? And I'm not going to take comments online on this bill just yet because we're going to deal with all three of these in one block. Anybody have questions for the patron?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Delegate Reed.
Yes, Delegate Durant. So just to clarify, this is changing it from 45 days to 14 days for early voting. And do you, and Mr. Chairman, after clarifying that, and just to understand, so do you have any data that actually identifies how many people voted from day 45 to day 14 that would now have to be compressed into the last 2 weeks? Because what I'm trying to understand is how many people are you potentially inconveniencing or disenfranchising by compressing it from 45 to 14?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate. I think it really probably depends on the election we're talking about. If it's a primary, if there's, where we are in the electoral process, whether it's, the November elections. And so I don't have data to support, what each specific one is. I've seen some studies have shown that it can potentially impact, and I think it's a mixed bag, frankly. But that's certainly nothing that we ever want to and encourage is to, in fact, decrease voter turnout. And when I speak to that disenfranchisement that I mentioned earlier, is that if they have gone through the process and they've already voted early, and then there is a change in the ballot, that certainly can lead to some frustration. I've already made that investment in that candidate, and there's some of the sands are shifting underneath them. So I think that when we're talking about making it a more reasonable, aligning with the rest of what we see in the 50 states, is still make sure that the electorate is engaged, that they're following through the entire process. They do have an adequate amount of time, at least to come in for early voting in person, and still make sure they're fully armed with as much information as possible and not too early.
Very good. Delegate Durant, thank you so much.
you.
Appreciate you
Thank you,
being here. And to let the committee and everyone else know, because these three are so substantively similar, there will again only be one of them that will advance, and we'll take care of that housekeeping wise in just a moment, since they are all dealing with the same issue in the same section of the code. All right, so Delegate Runyon is not here. Delegate Scott, I believe your bill, House Bill 1877, is up before us next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment in the form of a substitute to present to the committee for this bill.
Okay.
It's to just simply make the hours, the normal minimum required hours of 8 to 5 instead of what my bill presents, 7 to 7.
Okay, and I believe in doing that, then your bill will now be
It'll be identical to
what Delegate Runyon's bill was as
correct.
introduced. Okay, very good. Could I have a motion on the substitute?
moved.
And second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, great. And opposed? Ayes will have that, and so the substitute is before us. All right, Delegate Scott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the other delegate already pointed out, the 45 days, there's a lot of question and debate on the turnout that actually comes from that. Dating back to 2013, there has been studies and various groups that have looked at the actual impact of early voting, because early voting has been around a lot longer than COVID-19. And so it was with COVID-19 where we really saw an explosion of it. Now, granted, they were looking at more of just the no excuse early voting that other states had, but nonetheless, it still has existed. And even with COVID-19, we see states like Georgia that has shorter early voting timeframes, that has better turnout in relation to the actual registered voters. And so here in Virginia, the 45 days really does not impact, reducing early voting from 45 days to 2 weeks will not have that great of an impact. In fact, it may provide a better opportunity for folks. When you give people a greater amount of time to do something, it gets pushed off, and then sometimes even forgotten. Last year, the comment was made that even if we had one person show up on that very first day of early voting, it was still worth it. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would present to you that if we had 60 days of early voting, somebody would show up on that first day. If we had 90 days of early voting, somebody would show up on that first day. So it's a matter of really looking at the resources that are available, making sure that we're supporting our localities. Multiple areas have reached out to me after my bill last year and said, this is a bill that we would support. This is a bill that we think is important. And to put this undue burden, unfunded mandate on these localities is just not fair. And so a lot of localities have requested this bill be presented again this year. This is why you have 3 of us carrying it. And so I would ask that the committee consider passing this bill.
Very good. Questions from the committee for the patron?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Reed.
So again, Delegate Scott, I'm trying to understand, do you have data to be able to quantify picking any election that would give us an indication of how many people are voting from 45 to 14 days that you're talking, I mean, because it's like, it comes across as that we're making decisions based upon anecdotal evidence where it's like, okay, there's only one person who votes every day for the first 45 days. And so I'm just curious if you have any anecdotal information about that. And then second question, both you and Delegate Durant have indicated that this is an increased cost to the localities. Do you have any quantifiable data about what that increased cost is so that we can make an informed decision?
Sure. Great question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the delegate, I have asked for that actual data about the cost. The response is it varies because some people are able to show up and they can pay those folks. Some days they are not able to show up. And so the staffing issue is also an element here of also requiring the bodies to be there to staff these locations. There's a lot of issues that go along with the early voting. There's not the checks and balances that are in place on voting day. And in order to have those checks and balances actually worked out. It requires additional staffing that the localities just are not able to do. If you were to think about a local polling precinct, there are a lot of staff that are inside making sure that everything's done correctly. If you were to go into any location for early voting, you're probably going to find a fraction of that. And so the oversight is, they're just not able to provide the same oversight to help constituents cast that ballot and to provide the resources that the constituent needs. And so again, this is a request of the localities for this bill.
Thank you, Delegate Scott. Any other questions from the committee? Anyone in the audience to speak in favor of House Bill 1877? And seeing none, anybody opposed in the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Deb Wake. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. We oppose all the bills. The League of Women Voters thinks that the bill unduly restricts early in-person voting to 2 weeks. Military and overseas voters can begin voting 45 days before an election. There is no reason to make voting harder for voters at home. Many of those voters work long hours, multiple jobs, care for children, care for elders, or have long commutes. And yes, they prefer to vote in person. They should not be deprived of the opportunities that they have already had to vote conveniently. And I would point out that people probably vote all of the days of early voting, including the last day. So I don't think it's helpful to look at the first day to determine whether or not it's convenient. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we have online several people that have signed up for all three of these, have combined those into one list. And so we'll come down the list. We have first Ms. Ann Gregorian. Ms. Gregorian, are you with us this morning? Hearing. Nope. All right. So let's go on to we have Mary.
Hold on, I'm here. She wouldn't let me in. They just let me in. Yes, I would like to speak to this bill. First of all, as a taxpayer, I don't appreciate having to pay for other people's conveniences. 2 weeks is more than enough time. There's an element of personal responsibility in voting, and I think people should look to that. I was at the polls a lot this year. It is a benefit to elderly people, but I believe they can make it to the polls in advance, of the 45 days. 2 weeks is enough. As far as numbers, I don't know which gentleman asked about that. I also saw the numbers. They're very low at the very beginning. I think I calculated the cost just for our small locality as over $5 a vote just in staffing cost. So, convenience was done for the COVID pandemic, but that's pretty much done, or it's something we're gonna have to live with. So I support this bill. I support any bill that cuts this ridiculousness down from 45 days. As a taxpayer, I'm tired of paying for it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very, very much. Next, we have Mary Ivy. Mary Ivy.
She does not appear to have.
Doesn't appear to be here. All right. We have Vic Nichols. Good morning. Ms. Nichols, you are with us. If you go ahead. All right, and Ms. if you're there, it's last chance. All right, moving along to Kenneth Peoples. Mr. Peoples, you ready to testify?
Yeah, it's taking us 30 seconds or more to get connected this morning.
Oh, okay. Is this Mr. Nichols or Ms.
Yes,
Nichols? Or yes, okay. Ms. Nichols, okay.
That's okay. Very quickly, I have worked the polls and everything between Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, a little bit at Suffolk. I also know how Portsmouth went. And when I mean that, that means from the start of the whole season, starting in September and going all the way through Election Day for the past several years. it was so bad in Chesapeake that they had all the libraries and the registrars open at first in September. So the whole way through the whole 6 weeks, 45 days. People were not attending. This year, it was cut down to only the registrar's office open until 2 weeks before, and then they had the libraries open. It was still horrible. The only time people showed up was really on Saturday, because that was the whole thing. Even with canvassing out in during the time before then, people are like, we don't care about voting. 2 weeks before they did the whole deal, go to 2 weeks before they did, before it goes. That's where you're seeing the actual people doing stuff. Thank you.
All right, thank you very, very much. All right, Mr. Peoples, I see you're online. I'd like to hear what your comments are on this bill. Mr. Peoples? Mr. Peoples, I can see you. I'm not hearing anything from you, though. Speak now or hold your peace. All right, moving along, we have signed up to speak against Teresa Champion. Ms. Champion, are you with us this morning?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Teresa Champion. I'm with the Virginia Autism Project and the Virginia group of autistic associations. People pay for other people's convenience or benefit. This has been a benefit to the elderly. Well, it's also a benefit to the disabled. And during COVID, it may have been a convenience for everyone. Well, it's a necessary accommodation for the disabled, and they still need those accommodations. Robust absentee voting timelines and access to voting are important rights for people with disabilities and their caregivers. Virginia has a tool, many tools for verifying voter registration, checking the status of absentee voting, and which protects against any potential abuse of absentee votes. This timeline and removing access to absentee ballot box and other limitations in these bills creates barriers to voting for people with disabilities. Please continue to provide these expanded timelines so that everyone has access. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Delegate Scott, we'll give you the last word.
Leave it to the will of the committee, sir. Thank you.
All right. So, I'm sorry. Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess speaking to the bills, thank you, Mr. Chair. It constantly amazes me that we're in the Privileges and Elections Committee, and every year it seems like the only thing we don't talk about is voters and democracy. We have a debate about the logistics of debates, as if those can't be moved. We have conversations about the cost of turnout of voters, as if that's not worth it. We have a debate about questionable turnout statistics, which, no offense, but Georgia had one of the most important elections in the last 20 years. Of course their turnout was higher. And then we always have the scourge of localities, as if localities are more important than voters and our constituents and our citizens. And I guess I just always find it amazing. Like, let's have the debate about democracy and about voting. If you want less voting because you want less voting, just say that. But the last thing I'll say, because I'll keep this brief, because we've had this fight every year for 4 years now, is one person said that we're an outlier among states. Yeah, and that's pretty awesome. We are. We're easy to access the ballot. When I started this gig back in 2018, we were the second hardest state to vote in. We were an outlier among states then, too. I'm more proud that we're an outlier now. More states should be like us. I don't want to be like those states that are worse than us for voter access. So I would hope that we do not pass all these bills. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Van Valkenburg. And just to editorialize a moment, it might be said that there is a ditch on both sides of the road. We will now need to take some action on these bills. And so we'll go ahead and deal with Delegate Scott's bill. It is before us, but we operate on a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
We have a motion to report and up. With substitute? Up.
No, I was going to ask a question of staff.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. It seems like it was about 12 months ago that we reported a bill to the full committee from here on the same issue. Is that correct? And is this bill the same as that?
I believe that last year we had more bills that were omnibus bills, so they had a number of other provisions, but the concept of moving the start date of early voting to the 14th day prior to the election is something we have heard and considered before.
Again, a question. So when we started the committee meeting, I think the chair, Mr. Chair, you indicated that only one vehicle would move forward. What's the chair's desire in regard to rolling certain bills into other bills and moving?
What we will do is we'll deal with this bill, and then I will entertain a motion to table the other two.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, then
So
we have a motion to report?
A motion to report and a second.
Clarifying, is it with a substitute?
Yes, with a substitute. So, all right, so we got a motion and a second to report 1877 with a substitute, and everyone will please vote on the board. And Delegate Scott, if you'd like to vote. Everyone voted, and so the motion passes on a vote of 6-4. All right, now dealing with House Bill 1499 and House Bill 1901. We could have a motion to table both of those bills, and have a motion and second. Second, all right. Move to table House Bills 1499 and 1901. Is that a recorded vote? Or recorded vote? So move to lay those on the table. And those bills are tabled on a vote of 10-0. All right, thank you very, very much. And now moving along to House Bill 1414. Delegate Wiley, come tell us about your fine bill.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 1414 is in front of you this morning. Per the request of my constituents of the great 29th District, this bill, as you can see, extends elections for local and constitutional offices. The requirement that candidates who have been nominated by a political party or in a primary election be identified on the ballot by name of the political party. Currently, this requirement applies only to federal, state, statewide, and general assembly elections. Each candidate who has been nominated by a political party or in a primary election shall be identified by the name of his or her political party. Independent candidates shall be identified by the term quote-unquote independent. Basically, it provides constituents voting on the local level with the ability to easily identify the party of each candidate that he or she represents. I request this body pass this bill. Thank you. I'll entertain any questions.
All right, thank you. Questions from the committee? Delegate Leftwich. Oh, sorry. All right. Delegate Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for the patron?
Absolutely.
The question I have is when it comes to constitutional officers such as the treasurer, commissioner of revenue, others like that, that do not create policy, they only do what the General Assembly puts in policy and enacts into law. What is the benefit of having them register by party and being on the ballot by party?
That's a good question, and I've had the same conversation with those individuals in my neck of the woods. I would respond to the delegate, Mr. Chairman, by stating quite simply that my constituents are very passionate about their party, and they want to know who that individual or that is individual in that constitutional office position that they're running for, what party they're affiliated with, quite simply, and that's kind of the direction I'm going with that answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee? All right. Anyone in the audience to speak in favor of House Bill 1414? All right. Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition? I suspect I will see a few.
Good morning, Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We oppose HB 1414. We believe democracy is strengthened by a strong pool of candidates for all races. This bill would limit that pool. Our written testimony includes details on the risks that this bill could impose on retiring military and federal government candidates, subject to federal law restrictions. We also continue
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Paige Johnson. I'm Commissioner of Revenue for the City of Fairfax. I'm also the chair of our legislative committee. The Commissioner of Revenue Association opposes this bill as presently the majority of Virginia localities, the local governing body, school board, constitutional officers are all nonpartisan. There are approximately 645 of us, and the majority of all of these officers are nonpartisan. Partisanship among constitutional officers, as you've heard, is unnecessary as we do not caucus with anyone. We come together in a nonpartisan manner, excuse me, when issues impact us like this one. Adding constitutional officers to politics could result in more primaries, and localities will bear the brunt of the cost of those primaries. Not all localities that have partisan elections also have charter provisions requiring nomination by petition. Enactment of party identification would likely require local localities to change their charters to keep their elections nonpartisan by adopting specific language for the nomination by petition. This shotgun approach is not appropriate to localities and may provoke Virginia localities to change a longstanding practice of nonpartisan elections. Local elections are best served by addressing local issues, not party issues. In our local elections, we are not party connected. We are neighbors serving neighbors. Therefore, we respectfully request that you oppose the bill. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, I think we have some questions from the committee for you.
Thank you. My question is with regard to your association's pursuit of party nomination. If you want the office to remain nonpartisan, why are you seeking nomination within local parties, but then avoiding the designation that the bill would seek to impose?
That's a very good question, and I can't speak for my colleagues who do avail themselves of the process, the party process. My suspicion is it's a longstanding tradition within those localities, and I can't really address that beyond that, sir.
Others speaking in opposition? And would, in the interest of time, that we be as quickly as possible, but want to make sure we can hear from everyone.
I can talk real fast. Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Longacre, and I have the honor and privilege of serving Chesterfield County as their elected treasurer. I am speaking to you today on behalf of the Treasurers Associations of Virginia's Legislative Committee respectfully to ask you to oppose House Bill 1414. House Bill 1414 has appeared in similar forms for many years before the legislature, including more than a few times before this committee, most recently in 2022. On behalf of the Treasurers Association and the other elected constitutional officers associations, I can tell you that none of the associations have asked for this, as the vast majority of Virginia's constitutional officers, including treasurers, run as independents. We do this in an effort to ensure our constituents that all citizens will be treated fairly and equally when seeking service and assistance from our offices. We believe that all of our citizens should be treated the same, irrespective of political leanings. I don't let my personal views on anything come into how I run the office and making the decisions related to taxpayers' private personal information or to allow them to come in play when I'm hiring qualified staff. Treasurers' offices handle complex and confidential personal information relating to taxes, and I speak on behalf of 125 elected treasurers in Virginia that we strive to serve our constituents in a nonpartisan fashion each day. As required by the Constitution of Virginia, our positions are elected as a means of giving the local voters a voice in their local governments. Our powers are derived strictly from the Constitution of Virginia, the Code of Virginia, and the local ordinances and case laws. We are not policymakers. We simply implement the policies that you, the General Assembly, set for us. There's not a party or partisan way to tax people, to bill them, to collect, to invest in local revenue. And in the interest of time, I will skip forward and say in closing, I would like to first of all note my utmost respect for all of you all, what you do every day in the General Assembly. The Treasurers Association of Virginia simply believes that our offices should not become naturally partisan in an effort to keep political parties out of the highly technical process of billing, collecting, accounting for, and investing the revenue, and managing the complex, private, and highly technical matters related to property taxes and other matters.
And
I would be happy to answer any questions.
And we thank you very, very much and appreciate it. I imagine we've got that pretty well, but thank you very much for your testimony. I think we've got one more. If there's not something new that you're bringing, I just appreciate you just saying you're opposed and tell us who you are, but want to hear if there's something new that you've got.
Sure.
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My name is Josette Bolovine. I'm with the Virginia Municipal League. VML has had a longstanding position opposing requiring party identification to be placed on the ballot for local and constitutional officers due to all the reasons that were already said, as well as due to the Hatch Act of 1939, not allowing individuals in the federal workforce from undertaking partisan political activities. Many current locally elected officials would not be able to run for office. So for these reasons, we oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric Maybach. I'm Commissioner of Revenue of Fauquier County, and I'd just like to address the delegate's question. I avail myself of the party process, and I'm proud to be a Republican. However, when I took office, I think it's important that our residents don't feel burdened by the bipartisanness and are welcome to come in and speak to us. So I believe when I'm in that office, we sit there and we see all equal. They have to understand that as our residents, as our constituents, all of us, they have to have that same level of comfort. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. We do very, very rapidly online have some folks that wanted to speak about this. I believe speaking in favor, Ms. Nichols, are you still with us this morning? Need to do this very rapidly. All right, moving along to those that are against, we have Ms. Dinah Babb from the Treasurers Association of Virginia. Ms. Babb?
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Council, committee members. I'm Donna Babb. I'm the City Treasurer for the City of Franklin, and I am also the President of the Treasurers Association of Virginia. I oppose this bill, and I would greatly appreciate if y'all would vote against this bill. I'm not going to go in as everything else as Ms. Longnecker from Chesterfield County so eloquently spoke, but the Treasurer's Office is a nonpartisan, specialized in executive roles, and we don't set rules, we don't set policies, we enforce those policies. So it is a complex job. We manage finances, assessing properties.
Yes, ma'am. And so, not wanting to be rude, but we got to move along here. So, if it's not something new information, we just know that you're opposed, and we really appreciate your participation this morning. We'll go move on to.
Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you so much. We have Diana Howard. Ms. Howard, are you with us?
Mr. Chair, she's not in.
She is not in the room. All right, and moving on to Mr. Scott Grinstaff. And again, Mr. Grinstaff, if you just let us know if you're just, unless it's bringing something new. I see you're from the Treasurers Association, and we assume that everybody in that association is going to be standing in opposition to this bill.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm treasurer from Henry County for 23 years, and we oppose this for all the previous reasons stated. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you very, very much. All right. Any other comments, Mr. Doug-Wiley?
No, sir. Appreciate your consideration on this committee. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Committee explanation.
I make a motion to lay the bill on the table.
A motion properly seconded to table House Bill 1414. Everybody will vote on board. And House Bill 1414 is tabled on a vote of 7-2. Delegate Wiley, thank you very, very much. All right, moving along to Delegate McGuire, House Bill 1693.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 1693 will eliminate drop boxes in the Commonwealth. During the COVID lockdowns, we made drastic changes to Virginia's election law, and there's a large amount of the electorate that does not trust our elections. 45 days of voting, they're not used so much, and in the last couple of days, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of cost, and so to restore confidence in Virginia voters, we need to get rid of the drop boxes.
All right. Thank you. So this is just a straight repeal of what was there.
That is correct.
What we added back in with the addition of the drop boxes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it repeals the provision of the code providing the establishment of drop boxes in the Commonwealth.
Okay, very, very good. All right,
Very
questions?
straightforward, simple.
Questions for the committee, for the patron?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Delegate Reed.
So again, I'm going to go back to the same theme that I had before. We're talking in anecdotal examples. Large amount of population does not trust our elections. Can you quantify that? I mean, especially because even the Attorney General's Election Integrity Unit has said that there is no fraud, there are no issues with elections in Virginia. So I would just appreciate it if you could tell me what this large population is.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that it's clearly evident in the media and knocking doors and talking to our constituents. There's a large swath of our population that does not trust our election system. So we've proven that the lockdowns are over. These were put in place for the lockdowns. So if the lockdowns are over, we should go back to where we were.
So, Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up, just to confirm, Delegate McGuire, you have no information, no quantifiable information to support this?
Well, I've spoken with registrars across the Commonwealth, and these registrars said they are expensive and they're not used that much. I don't have the numbers with me today.
But again, Mr. Chairman, to follow up, that's not saying that people don't trust our elections. Now you're changing the direction to saying that it's a cost issue.
Mr. Chairman, I'm saying both.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I had the same question, but in addition to that, I guess I would say if I'm using your same metrics, I'm also out knocking doors and reading papers, and I see that people are very happy to have increased access in all of the measures that have been passed recently, including drop boxes, which have been super helpful for people with disabilities, the elderly. And so what I'm hearing at the doors is we're so happy that we have access to voting in Virginia in ways that we haven't had in the past. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Adams. Other questions from the committee? Anyone in the audience to speak in favor of House Bill 1693? Anyone in opposition? We do have some folks online. Oh, we have in opposition. Of course.
Hi, Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We support the use of drop-off locations and oppose HB 1693. During the pandemic, drop boxes assisted voters in avoiding contact. Even now, the drop boxes are a convenient, secure way to vote. Election offices have acquired them, and they follow strict guidelines from the Department of Elections. They're under surveillance at all times. You can put your completed ballot in the drop box with the confidence it will be counted, and you do not need to stand in any line to do it. We urge you to vote no.
Thanks very much. We have some folks online. Let's see. We have, speaking in favor, Diana Howard. Are you with us this morning?
Mr. Chair, none of these people have
Yes, nobody's there? Oh, we have nobody online. Wonderful. Well, the committee, first of all, Delegate, you have the last word. So.
Well, sure, Mr. Chairman, I'd just make an appeal that the lockdowns are over, and the excuse to have these were that we were in a pandemic. And so if it was truly that was the reason why we have these drop boxes, then they need to go. I also have talked with registrars who say on the last and final couple of days of the election, you have to have two strangers in the same car. It's just complicated. It's not necessary, especially when we've got election season 45 days instead of 1 day.
All right. Thank you, Delegate McGuire. Committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
Have a motion and second to report 1693, and we will vote on the board. We'll close the roll, and House Bill 1693 reports on a vote of 6-3. Thank you, Delegate McGuire. And have we heard from Delegate Batten is not in the with us this morning, so I would say we will motion to pass by. We will pass by for the day without objection, and so that completes our docket for today. And so, thank you very much for your attendance this morning, and the committee will rise.